So I've been doing it, we're doing it in between me and Kamar because we're not having Shal Shudas.
Rabbi?
Hi, good morning.
Good morning, it's Gail Toll. I just wanted to know if we needed any parshas or any texts that we should prepare if we're watching from home.
If you have a chumash, that would be helpful.
Bamidbar?
Yes.
Thank you.
Shelley, okay. Good morning. Here we go. Here's the list for you. Right? A nice day out here?
Yeah.
You're very religious. It's toasty the last couple of days, huh? Well, you used to live in Jacksonville, so this is like winter.
Yeah, no, you know what? It's so bad. It's totally overrated.
It's sticky. It's not. All right, I'm going to start in a moment. Everybody's rolling in. We can now have 250 people outside or something like that. No, but if you're a religious institution, you're exempt. And if you're protesting. So if you protest God, then you can have 1 million people. It's I think I have like the atheist convention. There's an old song by Journey, the atheist convention in LA. All right, so let's talk a little bit about Korach. Korach. As I said, I don't know if I said it to this group last time, but there's no self-respecting rabbi that doesn't give a drush on Korach, because nobody would ever give up the spot. Talk about where people fight against the leaders. It's like the greatest greatest musar of all time. But what I want to focus on is an interesting thing that I read in the Ber Yosef. The Ber Yosef it's this sefer. I want to see. It's this. Nice. It's brown. It's Hebrew. When I was young, I used to like this sefer. You ever have the ones that in the spine that had like the coloring? That I was still like made a sefer really religious if it had the coloring there. Yeah, like that. So this is done by Rav Yosef Tzvi Salant. Rav Yosef Salant, who was the Rav in Yerushalayim, I believe in the early 1900s, and he has beautiful insights on the parsha. But we start off with, of course, Korach making trouble against Moshe. So if you're in the stone chumash, it's on page 820. If you're in a regular chumash, it's Perek Tet Zayin in Bamidbar. So I think that must be Vivian who's here.
Hi, Rabbi. How are you?
Hi, Vivian. My favorite
I love that my rabbi calls me by my English name.
No, better you than me. So it says Vayikach Korach. Korach. Now, of course, the pasuk is very, very stunning, because normally when you have, and we learned on Zoom School this year, that when you have a verb and a subject and an object, there has to be an object. Vayikach Korach. Korach took. Korach took what? Now this would be like an English teacher's dream to look at this verse. If you translate it literally. And Korach took the son of Yitzhar, the son of Kahat, the son of Levi, and Dathan and Aviram. Dathan, of course, is Edward G. Robinson. Bnei Eliab, the son of Eliab, and On ben Pelet, the son of Reuven. Okay? He took. What did he take? It doesn't say that Korach fought. It doesn't say that Korach argued. It doesn't say that Korach was a nudnik. It doesn't say that Korach was mean. It doesn't say that, no, I'm sorry, we have to speak in today's language. And Korach was triggered, right? We don't say that. We say, Vayikach Korach, and he took. What did he take? So Rashi has a lot to say here. and if you look it's in the second Rashi actually, which is still in the first line. Vayikach Korach lokach es atzmo letzad echad lihios nechlak mitocha eda laorer ala kahuna. He took himself to one side, or you could say that he took a position to laorer ala kahuna. Laorer means to have contention with. So the term is used, let's say, in the Gemara in Bava Basra, which talks about boundaries, property ownership. That if someone contests the ownership of a certain piece of land, that's called le'orer, or to be a rabble-rouser, to make trouble. He made trouble. He made trouble about the kahuna. Now, he doesn't really. If I ask you this question, who did he have a problem with? Moshe, Aharon, or both? Right? So people think it's Moshe. I mean, because Moshe is the leader, so he goes to the leader. But his issue is not about Moshe Rabbeinu per se. Now, by the way, that's always the greatest. When you're in a leadership position and someone wants to share an opinion, as people often like to share opinions, particularly when you're not doing something right, and then we say, okay, so why don't you head the committee? Why don't you head the... I'm just talking. I'm not interested. No, God forbid. So he doesn't want Moshe Rabbeinu's job, because no sane person in this world, no self-respecting human being wants that job. Moshe Rabbeinu half the time doesn't want that job. He doesn't want that job, but he wants Aaron's job. Now, that's why the Torah lists his lineage. Ben Yitzhar ben Kahas ben Levi. He's a relative of Aaron, second cousin, or however it works out. He's a cousin of Aaron, and he wants to know, okay, Moshe, if you're the leader, why is Aaron the Kohen Gadol? That's a very oversimplified this situation. Why is he the Kohen Gadol? All right, he says, I get it that God chose. We'll see in a second that God chose Aaron, but why does he have to keep it in the family? Isn't there this concept of nepotism? Give it, spread the love, share the wealth type of thing. Okay, let's be a little bit of a communist. Now, if you look in the next verse, and this is where it's going to get interesting. This is where the Ber Yosef really takes off, and he says that Moshe, he got up in front of Moshe. He gets up in front of Moshe, and he has people at 250. So if I look at the Holy Art Scroll translation, he stood up, 250 men from the children of Israel. He had leaders of the assembly, those summoned for meeting, men of renown. Men of renown. Okay, so in other words, he didn't take the Nachshlepers, he took Choshev of people, very important people, to start this battle. What I did one year is, a few years ago, I came across the old notes, is I color-coded the psukim based on who's speaking. It's not just Korach, and it's not just Moshe, and it's not just Aaron. There's all these different types of people, and you'll see that everybody has sort of a different gripe. But you know that when people don't get along, my enemy's enemy is my friend, or however that works, right? When we find a common enemy, then we can get along. They say that's why grandparents and grandchildren get along, because they have a common enemy in between them, right? So this is what happens, that he has all these people. Now, who are these Kri'ei Moed Anshe Shem? Who are they? So I'll send out the handout afterwards, but you'll take my word for it. We have a Gemara here in Sanhedrin in the very first page here. The Gemara says, again, it's not much that, I can read it out loud. Chamish Messiah, Miyuchadim Shebe'ed, that is Gemara in Sanhedrin, on Daf Kuf Yud, on 110. Kri'ei Moed. So he says first the 250 were Miyuchadim Shebe'ed. They were Miyuchid. They were very, very important. Who's Kri'ei Moed? Shehayu Yodim La'aber Shanim Likva Chadashim. These were people who were experts at knowing how to leap the years and the months, etc. So we know that before we had a set calendar. Right now we have a set calendar, so we know exactly when Yontif is going to fall, et cetera, what day of the week, when we planned bar mitzvahs, this and that. Now I do it on my phone. It used to be that I had this purple book called the Perpetual 50-Year Calendar. I still have it. And I thought that was going to last forever. And the funny thing is it expires in 2020. Kind of like, I guess they knew the world would just fall apart in 2020. So it's this 50-year, 65-year calendar, whatever it is. And it has every single year, what day of the month, the English and the Hebrew. And now I just do it on my phone. Somebody wants to know, when do I have a yahrzeit? When does the bar mitzvah fall out, et cetera. We have that accessible at our fingertips. But before we had that, people used to come and give witness testimony in the court. And they would say, we saw the moon, it was such and such. But there were experts on the court that understood exactly what they were talking about. They knew, because they knew like it couldn't be if they came in the middle of the month. Oh, it can't be Rosh Chodesh, obviously. And they had to have a certain level of expertise. So the Rabbi Yosef Salant, he says, why is it that that Korach picked those individuals in particular? Like, what's so special about people who understood how to be Koveya HaChodesh, how to be Koveya HaYerach? What was the expertise in understanding the lunar calendar, etc.? Where did that come in handy? And he says, and of course, like a good Jewish person, Rav Salant, he answers this question with a question. Because Jews, that's all we know how to do. We answer a question with a question. If I were to ask you, Delil, today, how are you feeling today? So what's the answer? You don't say, I'm fine. You say, why, do I look sick? That's how Jews talk. So this is we ask. He says the question is we say there's a term that we use for Korach. Korach was not a dope. There's actually two terms we use for Korach, one in Yiddish and one in Hebrew. In Yiddish, they say a person is reich kekorach. Reich, a person is rich. Korach was actually very wealthy. They said a person is rich like Korach, and in Yiddish, that's an expression when somebody throws their money around. They say, oh, you're reich kekorach. In Hebrew, we say that Korach was pikeach. He was pikeach, which means he was very wise. He was astute. He understood exactly what he was doing. So he says, if Korach was so pikeach, if he was so astute, if he was so wise, why would he contend against Aaron? Does he not know that Aaron a Kohen was divinely chosen? We know. We have an episode. Rashi relates it to us in Parsha Shemini. When it came to time for the dedication of the Mishkan, what happened is Aaron was very forlorn because 7 days they're doing the dedication and the Shekhinah doesn't show. And Aaron says, maybe you're still upset with me about the whole golden calf thing, right? So we discussed that last time, the golden calf, that even though we're forgiven, you're not really forgiven. There's forgiveness and there's forgiveness. So maybe he wasn't really forgiven. So Moshe says, let me come with you. And he davened for him, and then the Shekhinah appeared. And we see from this that obviously Hashem forgave Aharon for his involvement in the golden calf episode. And the Shekhinah dwells. So we see that obviously Aaron is chosen by God. If Aaron is chosen by God, it has nothing to do with Moshe. Moshe didn't choose Aaron to be the Kohen Gadol. So if Korach is so smart, why is he bringing up problems with Aaron if Aaron was divinely chosen? What's the big issue? So he answers, and again, I'll try and summarize in his beautiful 3-page essay what he writes. And he says that no matter who, Korach, this is Korach's argument. No matter Moshe, who you would have chosen as Kohen Gadol, he says he would have been accepted as the Kohen Gadol. And where does he get this from? And what's his assumption based on? And he said it's based on the laws of Kiddush HaChodesh, the laws of sanctifying the new moon. He says because this is one of the only places in Jewish law where we accept testimony from anybody. Where, in other words, no matter who shows up, is accepted. And therefore, he says he brings the experts of Kriyei Moed Anshe Shem, the people who are Kriyei Moed, the people who understood the laws of Kiddush HaChodesh, that even if someone makes a mistake or miscalculation, we would still accept them. They said that they would actually, they would serve food. They would have like a kiddush to encourage people to come. And even if they had already received witnesses and people would still come, they would encourage people to come to be a part of the process. But what he says is that we weren't particularly picky when it came to this area. So he says if that's the case, maybe God just picked Aaron because he was right there at the time. How do we know that God really chose Aaron Cohen. Maybe he was just there. So Korach's argument is that no, it has nothing to do with Aaron's particular personality. He was just there at the time, and God was feeling happy. So how do we know that it was really Aaron? He says, and look at the people I'm bringing from Kiddush HaKodesh. It's an interesting argument that Rav Salant brings. But when he proves it from, he says, no, look at Moshe Rabbeinu's answer. If we go down in the verses, they come to Moshe, verse 3, they gathered against Moshe and against Aaron, and they said, Rav Lachem, you have too much. Can't you share the wealth? Can't you spread it around? The entire assembly, everyone is holy, and Hashem is among them. Okay, this is they're communists. No, it belongs to the people, it belongs to everyone. Everybody's special. I'll quote you one of the great films of all time that really, Eliana's making a face at me, like she's like, where's he going with this? I can't. You're entirely correct to think this, because I'm going to quote from you The Incredibles. You've seen The Incredibles, right? Eliana. And there's 3 of them now. No, 2 of them. There's 4 Toy Stories. There's 2 Incredibles. But The Incredibles were their family of superheroes. And there's a line when they said, if everybody has superpowers, if everyone is special, then nobody is special. If everybody is Kedoshim, now you have to go watch Pixar. If everybody is holy, then nobody is holy. That's essentially what's being argued here. So Moshe hears this. He falls on his face. This is a common reaction of Moshe Rabbeinu. He doesn't know what to do. He falls on his face because, like a gewalt, like what am I supposed to do here? Vayidaber el Korach v'kol adasol lemor boker v'yoda Hashem es asher lo v'es hakadosh v'hikri ve'lav v'es asher yucharbo yakri ve'lav. He says, in the morning Hashem will make known the one who is his own and the Holy One, and he will draw himself close. And whoever he chooses. So we have the showdown at the OK Corral, and they have the whole contest with the fire pans. Rashi says Boker V'yoda means it was a stall tactic. He needed time to get things set up. But what Rav Yosef Salant says, he says, Boker V'yoda, you want to bring me a proof from the people who understand how to establish the months and saying that we accept anyone? He says, no, Boker V'yoda. You think the Kohen Gadol is just whoever happens to be there and whoever happens to be in front of God when he made the choice? He says, that's not the case. He says, just like you know the distinct difference between Boker and Laila. You know the difference between night and day. And whenever we talk about differentiation, we say, it's as clear as day, or it's as dark as the night. He's saying with such clear distinction, he says, Moshe, Korach, no. This is not a happen to be there at the right time. Rather, this is not a Kiddush HaChodesh type of situation, but this is something that is as clear as day and clear as night. Now, we have an interesting addendum to this. If you turn the page, I'll read you the story. Again, this, and online I don't have this, but I'll send it to you. This is a Gemara of Gemara Bava Basra of Rabbi Bar Bar Chana. And it's in the bottom of, you see what it says 571, the bottom of the page. An Arab merchant came and he said to me, he says, let me show you the opening of the ground that swallowed the men of Korach. I saw 2 cracks in the ground for which smoke belched forth. The Arab took a piece of wool shearings, soaked it in the water, attached it to the point of a spear, and inserted this wool into the cracks. When he took it out, it was charred. So he said to me, listen carefully, what do you hear? I heard them say, and this is the line in the Gemara, it says, Moshe emes v'toraso emes. Moshe is the truth. His Torah that he taught is the truth, and we are liars. The Arabs said, every 30 days, Gehenna returns them back to this place like meat that is stirred in a pot, and they say, Moshe emes v'toraso emes, and we are liars. Moshe is the truth, and and the Torah is the truth, and we are liars. Now, back in the first page, what I have copied for you is the Rashbam's commentary on this Gemara every 30 days. And look what he says. And when does it happen every 30 days? Kol Rosh Chodesh. Today, by the way, is Rosh Chodesh. Today's Rosh Chodesh Tammuz. Good Chodesh, everyone. So on Rosh Chodesh is when it happens, again, to show him, Dafka, that it's not a Kiddush HaChodesh type of situation. It's not about, oh, the person that happens to be will accept anybody. No, God chose as clear as night and day. Now, by the way, that Gemara is famous in Bava Basra for a lot of reasons. Because we know what happened to later on, the Chumash tells us, U'bnei Korach lo mesu, that the sons of Korach didn't die. How come they didn't die? Now we know about On ben Peles. On ben Peles had a very wise spouse. His wife, she knocked him over the head with a frying pan and kept him knocked out in the tent so he didn't get involved in it. She's like, there's no good going to come of associating with these people. So she basically kept him busy in the tent and he didn't get involved and his life was saved. The sons of Korach didn't die because it says that when the earth opened up, they fell into the swallow of the pit. But like in the cartoons, you know, when you're falling off a cliff in cartoons, and you can be fine, by the way, when you fall in a cartoon, but there's always that one branch that's sticking out. The one branch is sticking, they grab onto it, and at the last minute, they start saying exactly those words. Moshe emes v'saraso emes. Moshe is true and the Torah is true. They did tshuva at the last minute, and what happened? They were saved. Which then answers a question. I give you an entire Rosh Hashanah speech right now. It's one of my favorite Rosh Hashanah speeches. I haven't given it here yet, I don't think. This year, who knows what a Rosh Hashanah speech is going to look like? Who knows what Rosh Hashanah is going to look like? It's in only 13 weeks, by the way. So maybe we should all have only white masks for Yom Kippur. I don't know. Who knows what it's going to look like? But it answers the question is right before we blow shofar, 7 times we recite the same chapter of Tehillim. And what do we say? Lama natseach livnei Korach mizmor. Nobody actually says the whole thing. We just say the first line. Lama natseach livnei Korach mizmor. Alam natseach. For the sons of Korach. You're telling me, Mr. Organizer of the Machzor on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, that you couldn't come up with something better before shofar blowing than Bnei Korach? Why are we talking about the sons of Korach? The guy who made trouble. Why do we have to mention him? Let's talk about him. Moshe, Abraham, Yosef. We got plenty of Tehillim. Why Korach? Why the sons of Korach? That's exactly because of this Gemara. Because right before we're about to blow shofar, it's possible that one can have the realization at the very last minute and say, oh my gosh, Moshe emes v'saraso emes. I get it. Now I understand. Now I can do tshuva. It's never too late to do tshuva. So in fact, it's highly apropos to recite that mizmar right before blowing shofar. So that's the Gemara. And that's the Gemara's explanation, Rabbi Yosef Salan's explanation about why Korach uses people that have to do with the establishing the month, meaning it's something somewhat arbitrary. Moshe says it's not arbitrary, and to show you that it's every Rosh Chodesh, I'll show you every Rosh Chodesh. A slightly different take on this is from a sefer called Imrei Shammai, and also includes, it involves the story of Kiddush HaChodesh in a sense, and it relates to this, again, to that Gemara. And also, a lot of people think that Korach had no business taking on Moshe Rabbeinu, taking on Aaron. I mean, look, we know how the story ends. So of course, why would you take on God's guy? But you never know that when a person's ego gets involved and a person thinks that he's justified, then he'll do it. He'll take on any cause and they'll just run with it no matter what, no matter how full of holes the theory might be, whatever. But sometimes if you yell loud enough and you get other people upset about certain things, then all of a sudden facts kind of go out the window. Okay? Now, Korach is an individual, as the Mishnah says, that there's a different type of machlokas, which is l'shem shemayim and not l'shem shemayim. The Gemara says if you have a machlokas l'shem shemayim for the sake of heaven, we say that's the machlokas of Hillel and Shammai. Hillel and Shammai, who argue countless number of times throughout the Gemara, and however, they're machlokas of l'shem shemayim, so much so that we're told that even they were able to intermarry, meaning the families of Shammai and the families of Hillel, they allowed their children to marry one another, even though there was like the Hatfields and the McCoys. But no, since their machlokas was l'shem shemayim. What's a machlokas that's not l'shem shemayim, not for the sake of heaven? So the Mishnah says, interestingly enough, the Mishnah does not say Korach and Moshe. The Mishnah says Korach v'adaso, Korach and his cohorts, meaning that even amongst themselves, they didn't have agreement, but rather they were arguing against a common enemy, which is Moshe Rabbeinu. Korach v'adaso. However, so that's an interesting Mishnah, but what we have to say is that even when you're arguing l'shem shemayim for the sake of heaven, you have to make sure that your l'shem shemayim is l'shem shemayim. You have to make sure that your sake of heaven is for the sake of heaven, because often people will get embroiled in all types of machlokas, all types of disagreements, all types of holy wars, which they think are holy, but are not indeed holy. They are not l'shem shemayim. But if you convince yourself that it's l'shem shemayim, what's going to stop you? So some say that Korach should have had no business. He should never have gotten involved taking on Moshe Rabbeinu. And he says that, and this is the Imre Shammai, and he says that a lot of it is based on, we see different stories in the Gemara. So let's look at the story. This is a great story. Again, this is on page 32. It's a Gemara in Brachos. And this is one of the great machlokas, great rabbinic fights of all time. I'm sure you've heard the story in one form or another. And this has to do with rabbinic leadership, which sometimes just because you're right doesn't mean that you're going to be selected. And this is and we have a few instances of like this in the Gemara where, because we have a structure of leadership, that structure has to remain intact no matter how flawed and no matter how much someone might have an argument to the contrary. So look at this. Now, this has far-reaching ramifications. A few years ago on Shavuos night, we delved into this in Kabbalistic sense, but I'll read you the story. The rabbis taught in a brisa. It happened that a student came to Rabbi Yeshua, who was the head of the Beis Din. And he asked, Rabbi, is the evening Shemona Esrei Marav, is it optional, is it mandatory? Rabbi Yeshua said it's optional. The same student then went to Rabbi Gamliel, who was the head of the Sanhedrin. So we have the head of the court, head of the Beis Din, and the head of the head Sanhedrin. He was the Nasi. And he asked the same question. By the way, mistake number one. Yeah. That's why it says, Aseh l'charav. That's when people say, Rabbi, I'm asking you a question. I go, well, are you asking me? Because when you ask something and you get an answer, you have to stick with it. You can't, my Rebbe once told me, you can't be a parrot. You can't go to this one, into this one, into this one, into this one. Because often people say, oh, well, this one said this and this one said that. So that's a terrible thing to say. Well, the Rabbi so-and-so, I spent a good part of my career hearing about what a certain other rabbi had to say, because half the congregation was from a different shul, a certain part of the year. Well, this rabbi said that. I said, that's great, except that he's not here right now. Okay, we're here now, and so there's a lot of that. So that's mistake number one. And by the way, when you see who the rabbi in the story is, it's pretty fascinating, the story. So they went to Rabbi Gamliel, and he said it's mandatory. So we have a machlokas. So the student says, but Rabbi Yeshua said that's optional. So Rabbi Gamliel says, wait until tomorrow when all the great scholars assemble in the Beis Medrash. When the scholars assembled, the student got up and asked, is the evening Shemona Esrei optional or mandatory? It's mandatory, said Rabbi Gamliel. Turning to the sages, Rabbi Gamliel then asked, is there anyone here who disagrees with me and says that it's optional? Like that. You can imagine the drama. Because Rabbi Yeshua is sitting there in the court. No, replied Rabbi Yeshua. But I was told that you said that it's optional. Okay? I was told you said it was optional. Challenged Rabbi Gamliel. He then said, stand up, Rabbi Yeshua, and let them testify against you that you in fact hold that it's optional. Rabbi Yeshua got up and said, if I were alive and the witness dead, I could deny it, and the dead couldn't contradict me. But now that the witness is alive and I'm alive, how can a living person contradict a living person? Meaning, I can't deny that I said this. He said, I'm busted. You got me. So Rabbi Gamliel continued his lecture. Rabbi Yeshua remained standing until all the scholars in the Beis Medrash began to complain. They called out to Chutzpah Sambaturgaman, who was the one who explained the rabbi's discourse as the rabbi was speaking, and they said, stop. And Chutzpah stopped his exposition. They said, how much longer are we going to stand by and watch Rabbi Yeshua's feelings being hurt? So in other words, Rabbi Gamliel, who's in charge, calls out Rabbi Yeshua, makes him stand up, makes him remain standing like wearing the dunce cap in the corner, okay, which you're not allowed to do today. You can't make people feel bad because we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, because God forbid you can't hurt somebody's feelings. But here he was publicly embarrassing him, so there's a long chasm between hurting someone's feelings and publicly embarrassing. But here he's publicly embarrassing Rabbi Hoshua. How much longer are we going to do this? Last year, Rosh Hashanah, we had that story. Rabbi Gamliel treated Rabbi Yehuda harshly, and that's a whole other story. There, they had a disagreement about when to establish the moon. And Rabbi Gamliel had one opinion, Rabbi Yeshua had another. Rabbi Yeshua was right, but nevertheless, Rabbi Gamliel was in charge. So he made Rabbi Yeshua, he says, I want you to come to me on the day that you think is Yom Kippur. Come to me with your walking stick, come to me with your wallet, come to me with your cell phone. I want you to drive over, because Rabbi Yeshua, for him, that was Yom Kippur. But he's to show you that, no, we follow, and he embarrassed him. He offended him again in the incident with Rabbi Tzadok, another story. And he goes, and look, this is the third time he's stopping him. So the people finally spoke up and they said, how are we going to tolerate this terrible model of leadership in which he's embarrassing our colleagues? Let's remove Rabbi Gamliel from office. They deliberated and they said, okay, that's very nice. But you can't have a suggestion unless you have a viable option or a viable solution, as we all know. It's one thing to say there's a problem. It's another thing to say there's a problem, but here's a solution. Anybody can point out a problem. To have a solution, they said, who should we replace? They said, no. We can't ask Rabbi Yeshua. That would be too painful because Rabbi Gamliel is his opponent. We can't appoint Rabbi Akiva because Rabbi Gamliel may invoke punishment on him and he has no ancestral merit because Rabbi Akiva actually descended from converts. So let's appoint Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Now here the question is, and this is why we're mentioning this story, is you can't have Rabbi Yeshua because Rabbi Yeshua is what's called a Nogea B'davar. He is involved in the matter. So what the Imrei Shammai is pointing out here is, what was Korach thinking? In other words, he never could have been appointed himself. In other words, ask yourself, did Korach want the job himself? This is something we have to look at in this story. And this is something that gets us to the root of understanding machlokas. If Korach, we could almost understand, if Korach really wanted the job himself, that never would have happened. Again, look at the story in the Gemara. But by the way, at the end of the Gemara, and you'll read on, is that they appoint Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah goes home and asks, he's smart, he goes home and asks his wife, and he says, should I do it? And she's like, what are you, nuts? I mean, today's news is tomorrow's, lining tomorrow's wastebasket. They'll get ready. They don't like you, but you do something, that they don't like, they'll get rid of you also. Very smart. And plus, she says, you're so young. So the Gemara says that he thinks that, maybe I'll have purpose even if it's only for a short time. And it says that overnight that he was 18 years old and he grew a long white beard and he looked much older. And that's why we know in the Haggadah, because it is Rosh Chodesh Tammuz, so it's almost Pesach, Elian. So in the Haggadah it says, Harei ani kiven shivim shana. I am like 70 years. So he aged overnight. That's it comes from this story. But ultimately, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah takes a position, and then finally, Rabbi Yeshua, and they come to some sort of power sharing agreement where one of them is on one Shabbos, another on the other Shabbos. Okay, but whatever it might be, there's no way that Korach could have gotten the job because he's what? A Nogea B'davar. So we have to ask ourselves the question: is he interested in the position, or is he interested in just making trouble? Does he really care about Aharon being appointed as the Kohen Gadol, or is he just making trouble? Which is, again, the reason why I ask that question, because when you study machlokas, especially when you study, let's say, conflict resolution, or people who spend their whole lives in this sort of field, when you are looking at a problem, look at what's rooted in the complaint of the problem. So if Aaron is really the problem, and Korach says he doesn't deserve to be there, and he wants someone else to be there, that's one thing. If he's just making trouble, because he doesn't want the position himself, because he knows he can't have the position, or maybe he wants it for one of his sons, or whatever it might be, that's a whole other question, okay? So this is part of, again, why the Torah goes through such detail of understanding what Korach's arguments were. And you'll look at Rashi, and Rashi tells you that he had all these arguments, and that he was getting different types of people riled up, and he would go to the widow and say, you have hardly anything, and here's Moshe Rabbeinu, and they're taking it from you. You have to give tithes, you have to give truma, and you have to give ma'aser, you do all these things which don't make sense. Okay, that's one thing. Or he's going to the Bechorim and saying, you guys, the firstborns, you used to have everything and now it's taken away from you by the Kohanim. So it seems very likely, though, certainly at simple reading, that Korach's only interest was taking down those who were in charge and getting people riled up for the sake of just riling up. Now, there are some people who really work like this, by the way. And I'm sure we've come across them. And usually we come across them in communal life. And sadly, we usually come across them in Jewish communal life, where people who struggle for attention, or people who struggle for power, people who struggle for recognition. I have seen this. I have seen this where synagogues have gotten ruined over things like this. I know it seems hard to imagine, but synagogues have gotten ruined over this because if you think about it, often, like I put it this way, when somebody's gonna be the shul president, okay, right? Shelley was the shul president, right? Her name's on the wall. You can see her, I'm looking at her. Hi, Shelley. Kicking and screaming. Anybody who wants to be the shul president, you should run away from. Anybody who says, I want to be the shul president, pick me, pick me, pick me, run away. There's a little bit of humility. There's a little bit of hesitation because it's a big responsibility. And so far, anyone here, since I've been and wanted to be the shul president, no one has ever wanted to be the shul president. They agreed to be the shul president, and with a bit of weighty responsibility of understanding what that is. Anybody who wants to be the shul president, more often than not, that's an individual who gets no respect at work, gets no respect at home, and they come to shul and they get a position of authority, a position of power, and like, oh, hey, I'm going to run roughshod over the congregation and run it into the ground, and people run away like crazy. One poor shul president can really do in a lot of years and years of hard work and accomplishment. And that's, by the way, any communal institution, not just Jewish. It just happens more in Jewish because, I don't know, I guess we can't get out of our own way. You see it in schools, you see it in charitable institutions, and you see it, people, even people who are, and you're talking about volunteers. Volunteers. Now, what is it about machlokas? What is it about a good fight that we can't stay away from? I mean, let's be honest. When we hear, like this, there's a term that we used to describe Lashon Hara, right? And usually the term is juicy, right? A juicy piece of Lashon Hara. But the juiciest type of Lashon Hara is about a good fight. You heard about what happened to this one and that one. When you see things, either it's in the media or social media, or you hear about, you want to find out. The human nature is that we want to find out what's going on. So look at this last Mishnah on the last page. And this is a Mishnah in Masras. And this is a story, again, about Rav Shlomo Zalman Kook, who is related to Rav Kook. And he used to travel around in Europe raising money. And he went to a shul. He was in a shul on Parshas Korach. And they asked him if he would speak in the community. And they asked, of course, there's a huge machlokas going on in the community. And he says, could you speak about machlokas in this community? So he quotes this Mishnah. So the Mishnah in Masros and talks about different types of things that require tithing. Mishnah Dalet. This is Uvayarak. It talks about kishuim, deluim, avatichim. Kishuim are cucumbers, deluim are gourds, avatichim are watermelons, melafafonot are also cucumbers, tapuchim, esrogim, fine. Then he talks about hachayiv b'shkedim hamarim, patur b'metukim. One who says that shkedim, almonds that are bitter, are obligated, but are exempt when it comes to sweet ones. And hachayiv b'metukim, patur b'marim. But those who are obligated in sweet ones, they say, are exempt when it comes to the bitter ones. What does this mean? So look at the commentary. This is from Pinchas Kahati's commentary on the bottom. Hachayiv b'shkedim hamarim patur b'metukim. Hashkedim hamarim ru'im la'achila rak ba'odem putani. Now apparently there's different types of almonds. I'm not such a big almond guy. I'm allergic to nuts. I've become more and more allergic to nuts, so I can't eat anything with nuts because I'm nuts. I have a couple of kids that can't eat nuts. So anything with almonds, I don't eat. I never liked Almond Joy, by the way. You remember that sometimes you feel like a nut, sometimes you don't. I know it sounds like so un-American and whatever, but I can't eat almonds. What are you gonna do?
Does it apply to almonds?
Almond milk also, I can't. Plus, when you mix almond milk and coffee, it doesn't, you got to keep mixing it so the pieces are floating around. Vivian thinks that's just funny, that I'm allergic to nuts. I could drop dead and she thinks she's laughing.
I like the almond joy. I like the almond joy reference.
Okay, I'm a useless.
Your mounds. You could have the mounds without the nut.
Yes, but then I can't eat chocolate because I can't have anything that's dairy either now. So I'm down to like 3 foods: meat,
Okay.
potatoes, and potato chips is the same food. Okay, if I eat potato chips, that's like a salad. Anyway,
Okay.
I digress. So the Kahati writes, Rav Pinchas Kahati writes, Hashkedim hamarim re'uyim la'achila rak ba'odam ketanim. Bitter almonds are suitable for eating only while they're still small or still relatively early on in their development. V'ilu hashkedim hametukim, however, sweet almonds, einam re'uyim la'achila ela kashehem kvar gedolim, are only good while they are already mature. And here he says the Mishnah is coming to teach us about different types of almonds. Some are good, some are not. So this is what Rav Kook Hidarshan for this community. He says there are different types of almonds. There are small that are bitter, which ultimately turn larger and sweet. And there's some that are small and sweet, but they grow and they become larger and they become bitter. He says when it comes to machlokas, when it comes to disagreement, fighting, he says machlokas is the second type. The second type, which starts off really sweet, really juicy, but what happens? It grows and it gets out of control. It gets out of control, then it's no longer tolerable. He says, shalom, peace is the first ilk. Peace, to make peace is very hard. You have to swallow your pride. You have to put away your harsh feelings for one another. It's very, very painful. He says, you have to give up your own point of view. You have to admit your wrongdoing. He says, but what happens if you really work at it, it ends up like those other types of almonds, which then become much larger and they become very sweet. So he says, when you have machlokas, what kind of almonds do you want to be? That's machlokas in the Mishnah. And by the way, how do we know what happened with the test with Aaron? As we'll read it later in the parsha. Right. He said, when people still didn't believe that Hashem picked Moshe over Korach, and people were still worried about it, he said, put your staff in. And what's going to happen? It sprouted almonds. It sprouted almonds. So it's a good thing to remember that, when you want to get involved in machlokas, and you want to say, first of all, is my machlokas l'shem shemayim? And then ask yourself, is my l'shem shemayim l'shem shemayim? Is my sake of heaven really for the sake of heaven? A. And ask yourself, is it worth it in the long run or in the short run? In the short run, while it may be very, very tasty, it may be very juicy, it may be very palatable, but in the long run, as it festers, as machlokas festers, and we know this all too well, where we have it goes second generations, third generations of families are fighting where the second and third cousins, they don't even know what they're fighting about anymore, but they just know that we're not supposed to get along, right? And we've seen that all too well. Or you want to maybe swallow the bitter pill, which at first seems very, very difficult, inedible, but ultimately it grows into something sweeter and it grows into something which is shalom. So, and the Gemara says on many occasions, but it's the very, very last Gemara in all of Shas, that ein kli machzik bracha el shalom, that the greatest vessel for absorbing, God's will in this world, the shalom is peace, So Korach has a lot of issues. What I would recommend, if you read through the parsha, read through who's arguing with whom. And there's Korach, there's Mishkan Adas v'Korach. If you want to see Rabbi Liebtag on his website, has a beautiful chart, how he charts this all out. But it's really something I think is worthwhile. So we have Korach, and then we have, God willing, we have next week, we have even some more exciting stuff. We have Hitting the Rock. Again, I will send the recording and I'll send you the sheets so you can take a look at it in advance, in retrospect. Everybody have a wonderful, wonderful day. Stay cool.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Sure.